If you're just joining us for the virtual public hearing this evening, we'll review logistics one more time before we get started, but please know that as you're joining us, your line is muted to minimize background noise. If you're logged in using the Zoom application, you can change your caller ID information by clicking participants at the bottom of the Zoom call. Click on your name and select the rename option. Please use your first and last name to allow us to record your presence during this evening's hearing. Please know that others joining with the Zoom application can also view your name, and this presentation is being recorded for the public. For this evening's hearing, we'll begin with a presentation providing information about the applicant, review the significant proposed changes, and then we'll take comments from the public. We will be utilizing the raise hand feature to indicate whether a participant would like to make a comment. The raise hand feature can be found by clicking participants at the bottom of the Zoom call. Click on your name and select the raise hand feature. If you're joining us by phone, you can also use the raise hand feature by dialing *9. At the end of the EPD presentation, we will individually call on those participants who have indicated they would like to make a comment. We will identify you by your name or the phone number you have called in on and unmute your audio. If you're joining the meeting via phone, please state your first and last name for the record prior to your comments. Please do not use the Zoom chat to provide comments, and any person interrupting others will be removed from the hearing this evening. If you're having technical difficulties, please use the chat feature to reach out to the EPD staff who are monitoring it to see if we can provide assistance. We'll get started in another minute or so as folks are joining us. So we'll go ahead and get started. I've repeated the logistics a couple of times, and so if you're just joining us, please know that you're being muted as you enter. We'll be using a raise hand feature during the public meeting towards the end of the presentation. If you've never done that before, if you click participants at the bottom of the Zoom call, click on your name and select the raise hand feature. If you're joining by phone, you can use the raise hand feature by dialing *9. You'll need to state your name for the record, first and last name, and you'll need to pause and wait a few minutes when we unmute your audio. So good evening, and I'd like to thank you all for attending this hearing tonight and participating in the permitting process for the draft NPDES permit for Georgia Power Company's Plant Scherer facility. My name is Audra Dixon, and I'm the manager of the Wastewater Regulatory Program in EPD's Watershed Protection Branch. My program drafts water quality permits for industrial and municipal wastewater treatment facilities in Georgia, and is responsible for drafting the Plant Scherer proposed permit under consideration this evening. Before proceeding, I would like to introduce the other EPD representatives that are present this evening. Ms. Whitney Fenwick, Industrial Permitting Manager on the Wastewater Regulatory Program, and Industrial Permit Writer, Ian McDowell. At this time, EPD is considering a NPDES application for Georgia Power Company for the issuance of the discharge permit for Plant Scherer, located at 10986 Highway 87, Juliet, Georgia, in Monroe County, to discharge treated wastewater via 14 external outfalls. The purpose of this evening's hearing is to solicit public comments for the draft wastewater discharge permit. The public notice for the draft permit and hearing was posted on September 17th, 2020 at the local courthouse and ran in the Monroe County Reporter on September 16th, 2020. EPD also posted public notice on August 31st, 2020. Any in attendance who would like a copy of the draft permit and fact sheet may email myself or go online and use the GEO's public inquiry portal and search for a submittal ID number 301792. Again, that's 301792. The draft NIPD's permit for plant Scherer allows for discharge to 3 receiving waters, and a map of the locations are provided on the next slide. Outfalls 01 and 11 discharge to the Ocmulgee River, whereas outfalls 02 and 02A discharge to Berry Creek, and outfalls 4 through 10 and 12 through 14 discharge to Juliet Lake. I'll pause here and allow you to review the discharge locations on the map. This slide contains the flow diagram for the facility provided by Georgia Power with their renewal application. Outfall 01 is the primary facility outfall, which discharges wastewater that consists of processed wastewater, non-processed wastewater, sanitary wastewater, and stormwater. Outfall 02, 02A, 07, 13, and 14 are emergency outfalls which may discharge processed wastewater. Outfalls 05 and 06 consist of intermittent processed wastewater discharges from cooling towers. Outfalls 08, 09, 10, 11, and 12 consist of discharges from various non-processed waste streams. Several internal outfalls are also present, representing individual waste streams before commingling. The permit includes effluent limitations and monitoring requirements at internal outfalls where necessary and required. I'll now go through the substantial changes that are proposed for this draft permit. Please refer to the summary page of the draft permit package for the full list of changes. As mentioned in the public notice, the draft permit package can be found in EPD's online application system, GEOS, by searching submittal ID number 301997. Internal outfalls 03D, 031, and 03J have been added to the draft permit for compliance monitoring, and where applicable, include the required federal effluent limitations from 40 CFR Part 423. The annual flow characterization requirement has been replaced with outfall-specific flow monitoring requirements. A chronic whole effluent toxicity monitoring requirement has been added. And finally, no detectable level of hydrazine will be allowed in outfall 01, and the permittee must additionally submit an annual inventory of water treatment chemicals discharged to state waters during the previous 12 months. The draft permit includes a maximum temperature limit of 90 degrees Fahrenheit and a delta temperature limit of 5 degrees Fahrenheit, which must be achieved at the end of the 30-foot wide by 100-foot long mixing zone. Total phosphorus monitoring has been added for outfall 01 as well, in accordance with EPD's strategy for addressing phosphorus in NIPD's permitting. Copper monitoring has been added for outfall 01, 02, 02A, 04, 05, 06, and 14, based on the reported application data, which indicated that copper may be present at levels of concern. In addition, Zinc monitoring has been added for outfall 04 based on the reported application data, which also indicated that zinc may be present at levels of concern. Finally, nickel monitoring has been added for outfall 05 based upon the reported application data, which indicated that nickel may be present at levels of concern. The draft permit includes an implementation schedule that requires the permittee to eliminate the discharge of pollutants and bottom ash transport water by November 1st, 2020. Additionally, effective December 31st, 2023, the permittee will be required to meet the BAT effluent limitations for FGD wastewater, which include limits for arsenic, mercury, selenium, and nitrite. Effluent limitations for TSS and oil and grease have been added for internal outfall 01B and external outfall 07 based on the combined waste stream formula, which accounts for the commingling and co-treatment of several regulated and unregulated waste streams. We've modified the maximum pH effluent limitation for outfall 02, 02A, 05, 06, 07, 08, 13 and 14 from 9.0 to 8.5 standard units based on the calculated in-stream waste concentrations for those outfalls. We've removed the temperature monitoring requirements for outfall 04 as there was no reasonable potential for that discharge to violate the in-stream Georgia water quality standards. We've modified the reporting frequency for total residual chlorine from quarterly to daily during periods of continuous service water chlorination to prevent biofouling. In addition, selenium monitoring has been added for outfall 07 based on the reported application data, which indicated that selenium may be present at levels of concern. Lastly, the permit defines what constitutes an emergency overflow for discharges from outfall 07 and increase the monitoring frequency for TSS and oil and grease to daily when discharging when emergencies overflows. In response to the federal cooling water intake structure rule, commonly known as 316B, EPD has reviewed the information submitted by Georgia Power Company in the application and has made a determination that the facility must operate a closed cycle recirculating system as final BTA for impingement mortality and entrainment. The draft permit includes this determination and requires daily monitoring of either the actual intake flow or cycles of concentration. Periodic visual inspections of the cooling tower structures themselves are proposed to support the daily monitoring and ensure proper operation and maintenance. EPD has also included specific permit conditions relating to coal ash pond dewatering. The draft permit includes language requiring the permittee to submit a coal ash pond dewatering plan prior to commencement of ash pond dewatering. The minimum requirements of the plan are outlined in the permit and includes a detailed description of the operation of the wastewater treatment system, lists constituents to be monitored, and includes both effluent and in-stream monitoring to ensure the protection of water quality. Once a coal ash dewatering plan is approved, it will be available for review on EPD's website on our coal ash information page. Specifically for the coal ash pond at Plant Scherer, permit conditions have been included requiring best management practices to ensure continual coal ash pond integrity through inspections, record keeping, corrective measures, and reporting, with a condition for eventually transferring ash pond impoundment integrity coverage to the CCR permit issued by EPD's Land Protection Branch once that permit is final. The final closure of the coal ash ponds is not regulated under the Clean Water Act. Hence, this draft permit does not include language or permit conditions associated with the final closure process, and EPD is not soliciting feedback regarding the final closure of the coal ash ponds during this evening's hearing. This draft permit is solely for the discharge of treated wastewater to waters of the state, regulated under the Clean Water Act. This concludes the formal presentation for this evening's public hearing. We will now begin the process to take comments from the public, and I will review the process on how to notify us and how we will call on you. We will be utilizing the raise hand feature to indicate whether a participant would like to make a comment. The raise hand feature can be found by clicking participants at the bottom of the Zoom call. Click on your name and select raise hand. If you're joining us by phone, you can use the raise hand feature by dialing *9. We will individually call on those participants who have indicated they would like to make a comment for the record. We will identify you by your name or phone number you have called in on and unmute your audio. If you're joining the meeting via phone, please state your first and last name for the record prior to providing your comment. When we call your name, we will unmute your line, and then please clearly state your name for the record and proceed with your statement. We apologize if we mispronounce your name, and we'll do our best. Please limit your statements to 3 minutes, ensuring we are able to hear from everyone who would like to make a comment this evening. If your comment exceeds 3 minutes, we will mute your line and move on to the next stakeholder. EPD highly encourages you to provide comments in writing by sending an email to the EPD comment box at epdcomments@dnr.ga.gov. Again, the email address is epdcomments@dnr.ga.gov. And now Whitney will call on the first stakeholder.
C. Bowers, your line has been unmuted.
Thank you. This is Chris Bowers at the Southern Environmental Law Center. First of all, I want to thank EPD for its flexibility during these uncharted territories that we're all navigating by making this available by Zoom. Thank you for your professionalism and access to the public. The purpose of the Clean Water Act is to control pollution of the nation's waters and eventually to eliminate it. The draft permit fundamentally violates this purpose. Publicly available environmental reports for Plant Scherer reveal that the site is plagued by contamination from decades of coal ash disposal in a massive, unlined waste pit sitting deep beneath the groundwater table. For example, there's documented widespread water contamination within, down gradient from, and downstream of the ash pond by boron, a recognized coal ash tracer metal. But rather than address these problems or impose improvements to stop them from continuing, the draft Clean Water Act permit proposes to allow virtually unlimited pollution of a state waterway, Berry Creek, for use as a wastewater transfer ditch, conveying that pollution downstream toward the Ocmulgee River. We heard in the EPD summary and presentation, effluent limits and conditions imposed at Outfall 1. Outfall 1 exists over a half a mile from the source of the pollution, which is the coal ash pond. The intervening Berry Creek is not protected by the Clean Water Act for the most part. The proposal embodied by the draft permit is unlawful. The act requires that permits include effluent limits necessary to meet water quality standards and to regulate pollutants that are discharged from point sources to covered waters. But that is not what this permit proposes. Instead, the draft permit sets the outfall discharge and effluent limits the final plant discharge at Outfall 1. By setting the point of compliance so far remote from the source of the ash pollution, Berry Creek is stripped of Clean Water Act and Georgia water quality protections by the draft permit. Just as the groundwater Plant Scherer is a public resource that does not belong to Georgia Power Company for use as a waste dump, Berry Creek is a public resource. This waterway must enjoy the same Clean Water Act protections of other state waters. Berry Creek is a tributary of the Ocmulgee River and is thus a water of the state of Georgia and the water of the U.S. DNR regulations define waters of the state to include creeks and rivers that are not entirely confined or can retain completely upon the property of a single individual or corporation. Berry Creek meets this criteria. It passes over a private landowner property on its way to the Ocmulgee and is bordered to a significant length before it reaches Outfall 1 by commercial property and property owned by a public Georgia entity, Monroe County. Because of this, the draft permit must ensure that the creek meets water quality standards, and it does not. By failing to protect the water quality of Berry Creek, the permit fails to fulfill its fundamental purpose of the Clean Water Act, the DNR regulations intended to safeguard water quality. This permit must be withdrawn and corrected to protect Berry Creek and the water surrounding the unlined Scherer Ash Pond. Berry Creek, in fact, originates within the ash pond. The Clean Water Act is violated as a result of the continuing water pollution of Berry Creek itself. We will submit detailed written comments on behalf of Altamont Riverkeeper. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. Andrea Goolsby, I'm going to unmute your line.
Hello, my name is Andrea Goolsby, a resident of Juliet, and I'm opposed to this permit being approved. Georgia Power cannot treat the Ocmulgee and Berry Creek the way that the aquifer is being treated right now. We cannot continue to let citizens be treated the same way that the aquifer is treated right now. We do not want our rivers and streams to be contaminated and pumped full of this water and become a toxic wasteland, areas that we enjoy, that our children enjoy. EPD's mission statement is to ensure clean water, land, and air, and allowing this permit to go through would be the complete opposite of what they're supposed to stand for. Thank y'all for this opportunity, for giving us a chance to comment.
Thank you, Andrea. Stephen Stetson, I'm going to unmute your line.
Good evening. My name is Stephen Stetson. I'm a senior campaign representative for Scherer Club, covering clean energy and fossil fuels in Georgia. We're the nation's oldest and largest environmental nonprofit. We have over 3.7 million members and supporters nationwide. Thanks to the hardworking folks at EPD for this opportunity. It'd be better to be there in person, but the pandemic prevents doing that safely at this time. I'm glad to be able to speak on behalf of the 75,000 members and supporters of the Georgia Scherer Club, a great majority of which are concerned about the ongoing operations of all three of Georgia's coal-burning power plants, particularly this evening, Plant Scherer. The Clean Water Act is a bedrock environmental law. Under this law, as technology improves, the polluters have to keep up and adopt improved technology to keep our waters clean. Unfortunately, Georgia Power has not kept up. They've dragged their feet for decades and have not been a good neighbor to the areas where they serve the state making electricity. Scherer Club is alarmed that Plant Scherer's NIPD's wastewater permit expired in 2006. Plants like these are supposed to be reviewed regularly, at least once every 5 years, and their water treatment improved. The end goal is clean, safe water, free from toxic heavy metals for people everywhere, with water pollution completely eliminated. But instead, year in and year out, Georgia Power keeps dumping toxic wastewater from Plant Scherer into our waterways. According to the EPA, Scherer drops 2 million pounds of toxic water pollutants into nearby waters, and that pollution should not be dumped into our water. It needs to be treated with the best available technology, usually a physical or chemical treatment plus biological treatment for toxic metals like mercury, boron, arsenic, selenium, and nitrates. The proposal before us tonight is for them to delay treatment until the last possible date, December of 2023, and they don't need to wait this long. This kind of treatment has been installed elsewhere in under a year, and Georgia Power is sophisticated, and they've known this was coming for decades. So to sum up, Plant Scherer has operated on ancient and outdated permits. They've handled toxic wastewater with equally ancient and ineffective practices. Technology has improved a lot in the decades since current practices were adopted. Georgia Power is a sophisticated company, and they can and should have already adopted the best available flue gas desulfurization wastewater treatment. This community did not set out to become famous for these issues. These folks deserve the best available treatment. They deserve clean water like other communities around the country, and Georgia Power is asking for another pass to delay treatment. EPD should not give it to them. EPD should protect the community, revise this proposal, and require the flue gas desulfurization wastewater treatment now. So thank you all for your time this evening.
Thank you, Mr. Stetson. I'm going to unmute the line of someone called GCS. Please state your full name for the record after I unmute your line.
Hello.
Hi, you're unmuted.
Hi, my name is Jenny Seitz, and I also have with me my brother, Carl Cass. We're both joining together on this Zoom meeting, and we both would like an opportunity to make a comment in opposition against the permit. So again, my name is Jenny Seitz. I am a lifelong resident of Juliet, Georgia. The ash pond and power plant is located less than a mile from my home. And I have been in this residence since prior to the construction of Georgia Power in 1980. And my family and I adamantly oppose this permit and request that EPD deny Georgia Power's request for this permit and require them to correctly filter this water and treat this water before it is dumped into Berry Creek and the Ocmulgee River. Our family has been affected by the pollutants of Georgia Power for many, many years. And it is time for the public to be heard, and especially because there is a lawsuit in effect against Georgia Power, right? Is EPD not approve this permit?
Yes, this is Carl Cass. I'm Jenny Seitz's brother. I've lived here adjacent to Jenny's property, which was our mother and father's property, since 1975, well before Georgia Power came here. I have no water. My water is contaminated with deadly chemicals. Excuse me, not chemicals, alloys, metals. That's totally atrocious in 2020 to even have to say those words about people's water. It's unheard of. It's inhumane. And to apply for a permit to knowingly and willingly dump these toxins in our fresh water or water of any kind is simply absurd. I cannot believe that it takes a public hearing like this to have a company be good corporate citizens in our community. It's absolutely hypocrisy in my mind. I'm in complete 100% opposition. Stated for the record, please.
Thank you both for your comments. Next, I'm going to unmute Alan Griffin. Alan Griffin?
Yes.
Alan, did you want to make a statement for the record?
Yes. Okay. Yeah, I was just wanting to let you know I oppose it 100%. I live just right up the hill from Berry Creek. I live right across the street from the Georgia Power plant, and our water is messed up. Has been. I've been here for 28 years. We live right next door to the pipeline that they installed later. Wasn't long after we moved here. And I really believe people ought to go do a little bit of inspection of the pipeline itself, because we've been around it before, and the vent pipes that come up, they're caving in around them, like they're leaking. So I'm presuming there's probably some there. Not to mention they've had a, a huge pipe that comes across the highway 87 and runs directly straight into my property and dumps all of the water from the Georgia Power side of the road off their runoff straight across my property. I had the DOT out here when I first moved here and asked about seeing about maybe just sending the water down the side of the ditches or something instead of just cutting across my. It's got a huge ditch cut across my property, and DOT at the time told me it was that way when when I bought the place, that I just had to live with it. Since then, they've come up and looked at it and said they were going to straighten it out and they would turn it and change it. Nothing at all has been done. So to me, Georgia Power's got away with way more than they ever should have ever been able to get away with. So I don't think they need to be given any more free rides. And that's all. Thank you.
Thank you. I am going to unmute Gloria Hammond.
This is Gloria Hammond. I have lived here on this property since 1971. And Berry Creek borders my property. In fact, I'm the first home that it touches coming out from Georgia Power, my land. And over the years, when my children were growing up, they played in that creek and did very well. Later on in years, I noticed that the mussel shells disappeared, the fish disappeared, the turtles disappeared, the beavers down there disappeared. I stopped my grandchildren from going. Something was wrong with that creek and has been ever since. My well water is affected here. I'm 66 years old, having to haul water, and I do not want nothing else dumped in this.
I'm not sure if Miss Hammond had completed her comment or if there was a connection error. If so, Miss Hammond, if you are still on the line and would like to finish your comment, please raise your hand and I'll unmute your line again. While we wait to see, I'm going to unmute Fletcher Sams.
Hi, my name is Fletcher Sams, and I'm the Executive Director and Riverkeeper for Altamaha Riverkeeper. We're dedicated to the protection, defense, and restoration of Georgia's biggest river, the Altamaha, including its tributaries, the Ocmulgee, Oconee, Ohoopee, and the lakes within the watershed. We work towards the Clean Water Act's goal of fishable, swimmable, drinkable water for the communities and users of this important ecological region. We have many members who rely on the water quality of Berry Creek, the Ocmulgee River, Lake Juliet, as well as the groundwaters feeding those water bodies, who regularly fish, swim, boat, and recreate in these waters. We appreciate the opportunity to comment on this permit tonight. The proposed permit violates the Clean Water Act because it allows unlimited toxic pollution to Berry Creek, transforming it basically into a waste dump above the dam, forming Ash Pond 1, into a wastewater ditch below it, affording no protections under the Clean Water Act. The permit fails to impose adequate monitoring of water quality and completely omits bromide monitoring. It also fails to impose sufficient conditions on the rate of ash pond drawdown levels during the dewatering of the pond during closure. EPD has not followed its mandate in this case to protect groundwater quality at Plant Scherer, effectively wholly giving away a public resource, the aquifer, to a private entity, Georgia Power. This permit proposes to extend this misdeed to include the surrounding surface water of Berry Creek, the Ocmulgee, and Lake Juliet. This is an excellent opportunity for EPD to take corrective action and deny the permit until Georgia Power corrects this by requiring to remove the 16 million tons of industrial waste burying the former channel of Berry Creek and the portion of the state waterway that's currently situated under Ash Pond 1, to impose adequate monitoring requirements for all discharges of pollutants to Berry Creek, including numbering the unnumbered outfall to Berry Creek located at the base of the dam, where Berry Creek flows from beneath the dam, continuing towards the Ocmulgee River. You also need to impose a requirement to monitor bromide and put real limits on the conditions of the rate of ash pond drawdown. The people of Juliet, Georgia deserve better, and y'all have the opportunity to provide that to them today, and I hope you will. Thank you for the chance.
Thank you. Gloria Hammond has rejoined us. So Ms. Hammond, I'm going to unmute your line again.
I'm sorry, I lost the signal. I just basically want to say I hope y'all will vote no for this. The creek is right here at my house, and I have witnessed over the years the gar coming up from the river. I have seen disappearance of all wildlife down there that lives in this creek. And I knew something was happening, and it's not nature, it's man-made. And that is my reason why I'm voting no. We have got to have clean drinking water for our future, and these aquifers have got to be cleaned up, and the rivers and the creeks have got to stay clean. So my thing is to ask y'all, please say no. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, Miss Jenny Bruner. I'm going to unmute your line.
Good evening. My name is Jenny Bruner. I live in Forsyth, Monroe County, but all my family, Miss Gloria Hammond and several others from Juliet, are my family, where I was over there, spent a large majority of my life from childhood up. As Miss Hammond was speaking about the creek down there, the wildlife in the creek, the being gone. I pray that y'all think about not only the life that lives in the water, but there's other wildlife that drinks out of that water and stuff. With everything going on in Juliet, with the water, no water for a lot of folks over there, and everything, that y'all will reconsider this here. I think it's time the EPD gets out and goes and checks these checking stations that Georgia Power has already out there. We know that there have been some waste that was not reported, that nobody knew about till after the fact. There's several things that needs to be brought to attention to EPD. Georgia Power is a very powerful company in the state of Georgia, and we're glad to have them there for the jobs and stuff. However, their environmental issues are not up to standard, because they have high-powered lawyers and they have a lot of money, where our locals don't have that kind of money. We feel like we've been pushed aside. And it's time for EPD to stand up and help the locals, help us with our water and our waterways in the state of Georgia. Not only here, but where other Georgia Power plants are as well. You have family sicknesses going on. You have animals that are dying. You've got stuff in the water that are no longer there active anymore. So yes, we vote no. We ask that y'all please review this carefully and cautiously and think about the little man on the pole on this. Okay, thank you and have a good night.
Thank you. We do not currently have anyone with their hand raised that I can see. Audra, would you mind reminding the people that have called in how they can raise their hand? I've noticed that I haven't gotten any phone lines that have raised their hands yet. I do have one other person that's raised their hand just now. John Dupree. I'm going to unmute your line.
Hello, are you there?
Yes, we can hear you, Mr. Dupree.
Yes, I also oppose the permit that's being put up for several reasons. I mean, the EPD is here to protect our environment. As you've heard from other people here, the environment is not being protected. We ask that you protect this environment. We ask that you protect our waters, that you keep them clean. Georgia Power is in violation of several Clean Water Act issues. They are in violation one, where we know that the water, the ash pond, and the water in the ash pond is below and into the aquifer. I mean, we know that should be at least 5 foot above the known aquifer. So they're polluting our waters already. This is going to allow them to pollute waters even more. We also, as several have mentioned, there's contaminated groundwater here. Our wells are affected. We can't use our wells. So yes, the county's looking at running county water out. Well, that water is coming from the Okmulgee. So now we're going to take polluted water, pump it out of these ponds and out of these discharges, put it back into the Okmulgee so it can flow downstream. The treatment plants can draw it back in, send it right back to us. Only now they're going to do it through a county water system versus our own wells. I ask that you guys step up, protect the environment. That's what you are there for. That's what we are asking you to do. And that's where you should stand on this. And please deny this permit and make these things be cleaned up and taken care of properly. We are not opposed to Georgia Power. I'm not having any issues other than the way they protect our environment is atrocious. There is no protection there on that whatsoever from my point of view. And I just ask you to deny that permit. Thank you.
Thank you. If anyone else would like to make a comment, please raise your hand. We don't have any hands raised right now. Reminder for those calling in by phone, to raise your hand, you can select *9 and I can unmute your phone for you. Aaron Mitchell, I'm going to unmute your line.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you now, Aaron.
Okay. Hi, my name is Aaron Mitchell. I'm Environmental Affairs Director for Georgia Power Company. I'd like to thank EPD for hosting and giving folks an opportunity to comment on the draft permit. I'd like to make a few short statements related to the permit. As you know, Scherer has been a part of the community and the region since the early 80s, and since that time has been regulated by wastewater permit since it started up. This draft permit incorporates new federal rules and establishes new conditions which further assure that our discharges remain protective of the environment. I'd like to highlight a couple of those in my statement here. The permit adds temperature monitoring for the Ocmulgee River. It also establishes compliance with EPA's cooling water intake structure rules. It as well includes a significant increase in the amount of compliance monitoring and the associated reporting requirements related to that monitoring. Further, it requires compliance with EPA's updated effluent limitation guidelines, and of which, of notable, Plant Scherer has installed significant new pollution controls over the last several years related to dry ash handling, as well as wastewater treatment facilities related to these requirements. On those, we look forward to working with EPD as they continue to incorporate even the latest updates that were issued by EPA. Finally, as we look to ash pond closure, dewatering is the first step of any ash pond closure. This new permit requires that we submit a dewatering plan for EPD's review and approval prior to starting that dewatering. It will include expanded monitoring requirements, not only of the discharge, but also of the river upstream and downstream of our facility. It'll also require those results to be reported to EPD, and as well, Georgia Power will post those to our website. As we've made commitment throughout the state, Plant Scherer is no different for dewatering. We've committed to hiring third-party independent qualified contractors to not only design, but to operate the wastewater treatment systems that'll be installed related to the dewatering activities. We will also employ third-party qualified sampling firms that'll collect the required samples by EPD. And then we will send those samples to third-party accredited laboratories for analysis. All that information, of course, submitted to EPD, but as well placed on Georgia Power's website. In closing, I'd just like to say that Georgia Power takes our commitment to the protection of the environment very seriously. Plant Scherer and our employees are members of the community. They live and raise families in the community. And this commitment to compliance and the safe and reliable operation of Plant Scherer is fundamental to that commitment. This permit is no different. So we believe EPD's issuance of this permit demonstrates that and assures that our discharges will remain compliant and protective of the environment. And I'd like to thank you for the opportunity to make these comments.
Cindy Griffin, I'm going to unmute your line.
Hello?
We can hear you now, Cindy.
Okay. I would like to oppose the permit. We live directly across from Plant Scherer, between Plant Scherer and the Ocmulgee River. We also are situated where Berry Creek runs beside our property and the Ocmulgee runs behind our property. So we are surrounded by 3 ways of this pollution that is being dumped into these creeks. Some of the ash ponds or gypsum ponds, we are less than 2,000 feet from these ponds and from where Berry Creek drains. We also have the pipeline that also drains, that's right directly across the street and follows the same path. So we are surrounded in 3 different ways by this pollution. And I would like to say that I am very opposed to this permit. Accidents happen all the time. Georgia Power does have accidents, and I don't think that I should have to be worried about we do not have city water, we don't have county water, we've had well water all this time. We can't get any county water for right now. I don't think I should have to worry daily about whether my well water is safe or not, or have to keep testing repeatedly. Thank you.
Thank you. Jenny Bruner, I'm going to unmute your line.
Yes, ma'am. I have another statement to the Georgia Power representative. I have friends who work with Georgia Power, even though they're not allowed to speak about what goes on at Georgia Power, who have told family and told friends in the Juliet area, due to contaminants in the area, they suggest that they move from that area as soon as possible. I understand that we have a lot of good people who work there, and I believe Georgia Power does have a good intention. However, families are affected by the pollutants and these metals that come from Georgia Power, whether it's intentionally or unintentionally, and I believe that it's unintentionally. The EPD really looks at this here request for a permit. Thank you.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to make a comment? I'm not seeing any raised hands currently. John Dupree, I'm going to unmute your line.
Yes, I just want to make one other comment. I mean, I do understand the Georgia Power families and stuff live here. They work in this community. They live here. And I don't doubt that Georgia Power takes things seriously, like protection of the environment and other things. But I also believe that they do just what the law requires. I do believe, Mr. Mitchell, that Georgia Power can step up their game. And if they want to protect, they should protect above and beyond what the law requires. That would show a true caring act for the environment and for the people that live here. And I think that's where EPD can step in and up their game and require these things to exceed what maybe the EPA requires, and look at Georgia laws and restrictions and actually protect our environment instead of just going about it and let things like this slide and let pollution happen. We need to protect this. We need to protect our waters. And we're asking you, EPD and Georgia Power, to step up and do that. Thanks.
GCS, I'm going to unmute your line again.
Hello?
We can hear you.
All right. Again, this is Jenny Seitz. And I'd just like to add that The federal government has entrusted the state of Georgia, the Georgia Environmental Protection Division, with the authority of making decisions that are in the best interest of the residents of the state of Georgia. And it's a huge responsibility that EPD has. I'm thankful that our Environmental Protection Division at the state level has exhibited such professionalism that the federal government would allow you to make decisions that are in the best interest of our environment for our public. However, I'd like to stress that while they had granted you that authority, it is of utmost importance for you to make sure that there is no doubt whatsoever that this permit is not contaminating our water. It is going to contaminate our water in our community. And I think that if you grant this permit to Georgia Power, then you are making a statement that, in my opinion, and I believe very strongly in other constituents in the state of Georgia, agree that you would be violating our rights to clean water in this state. And it would be an embarrassment for our state, being that we have been granted the authority to make these decisions, which are historically made on a public or on a national level, federal level. It would be an embarrassment for you guys to approve this permit, given that you've been granted the authority to do so, and knowing that by granting this permit, it is continuing to contaminate the waters of the people in this community. So I'd just like for you to take your position very seriously and not be an embarrassment to this state. And that's all I have.
Thank you. If anyone else would like to make a comment, please use the raise your hand feature, or if you're dialing in from a phone, press *9. Gloria Hammond, I'm going to unmute your line.
I just wanted to say that on Luther Smith Road, at one time we had 15 families living here. They're all gone except for 2 of us. Out of 15 families, we had 9 cancers. Most have died from it. That's off of one road. Now, I can't say Georgia Power calls that because they say we're a cancer cluster. You can go across the road and you can go up Bowden Road where it was high levels of water contamination. And again, you run into cancer. 87, where my neighbor's water tested high, throat cancer. If y'all don't think it is a problem here in Juliet, something is very wrong. And I don't know how to correct this. I don't know how to ask y'all to correct this. But please, do due diligence before you act hastily. They are going to get by the skin of their teeth to do what is just strictly legal and not beyond. That has been proven here already. So please, please review this. We're dying down here. and we need help. That's all I got to say. And thank you for your time.
Thank you, Ms. Hammond. Thought I saw another raised hand. GCS, I'm going to unmute your line.
Hello?
We can hear
Hello?
you.
Okay, good. Thank you. This is Carl Cass. I'm with Jenny Sykes. We're practicing green energy by utilizing one device. I want to thank you again for this opportunity to speak. And for those, as Ms. Hammond just mentioned, I honor this opportunity to speak for those that are no longer with us. I'm on the other end of Luther Smith Road. Ironically, I guess the contamination stops 100 yards from my property because Georgia Power bought all the property all the way down on the end of my line. And those folks, as Ms. Hammond says, they're dead now. So they can't be on this call. So I'm going to, in conjunction with Ms. Hammond, speak on their behalf that they would oppose of this too, had Georgia Power not bought their property and poured cement in their contaminated toxic wells. I've lived here all my life. I was here before that power plant came here, and now they have ruined my property. They have ruined my well. I cannot get clean water other than going to my local church, who is so graciously helping all of us in our community by providing free water. And on top of that free water, as I stand at the water buffaloes or at the water provided at this church that I speak of, let's keep in mind we're in a pandemic. And while this pandemic is alive and well and seems to be on the upswing, I'm standing there adjacent with other people that's in the same boat that I'm in. I have to rely on a community water provider. And who knows if we're spreading this COVID-19 as we're all gathered to get this water. I too have been affected with health related issues. My son was diagnosed with cancer as a senior in high school, but conveniently for Georgia Power, statute of limitations has run out on my son's illness that he'll have to face for the rest of his life because of these toxics that's in my well that my son has drunk all his life. So conveniently, once again, he has nothing as a result of this toxicity in my well. My beautiful Princess Kylie, my niece, Jenny Sykes' daughter, Ewing sarcoma, a very rare Ewing sarcoma. Cancer. She's a junior in high school, for God's sakes. She has had so many surgeries, I can't even begin to count them. She has been left with scars, and I don't like to use the word disability, but she has disabilities as a result of potentially toxins in this well here. And I ask that the EPD stop this, please stop this by opposing this request on behalf of Georgia Power. Please, let's be good stewards in our community, as Mr. Kraft and Mr. Mitchell have stated numerous times publicly. Stop the insanity. You keep doing the same thing today, tomorrow, knowing that the results are going to be unfavorable. That's insane. So please, EPD, please Protect the kids of our future. Protect the future leaders of this great nation, the United States of America. Be humane, please, and vote no. I could go on, but for the sake of time in my 3 minutes, I thank you for this opportunity and I pray for a no vote. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir. Cody Norrid, I'm going to unmute your line.
Hello, good evening. Thank you to EPD for holding this hearing and making it available online for all of us. My name is Cody Norrid. I'm the Interim Executive Director of Georgia Interfaith Power and Light. Georgia Interfaith Power and Light exists to equip and inspire faith communities and other houses of worship across the state of Georgia to engage in issues of protecting creation and environmental justice. I'm adamantly opposed to this permit. I think it's clear from what everyone has said today that this permit is in violation of the Clean Water Act. It's clear that the community that lives around this pond are extremely concerned about how the coal ash contaminants have already contaminated their water, their wildlife, and their health. And it would be an insult to the community, to the law, and to the holiness of creation, instilled by God and gifted to human beings. To approve this permit would be in direct rebellion of EPD's mandate to ensure clean water to the communities of Georgia, and it would also be an insult to the communities that live there, and it would be in direct rebellion against God and the charge of all of us to care for creation and to care for our neighbors. EPD and Georgia Power will be complicit in the further destruction of the people and the environment and creation of Juliet if this coal ash pond is allowed to continue to contaminate the aquifer in which it sits. So I only ask that you listen to the people who have already spoken and that you live up to your charge and your calling and do not permit this coal ash pond to be closed in the ways that it has, this draft permit suggests that it will be. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I don't see any hands raised currently. I did believe I saw Pam Spear raise a hand, but then it went away. I'm going to unmute that line, but Pam Spear, if you do not want to make a comment, you can just decline the request to unmute.
Yes, my name is Pam Spear, and I live on Highway 87 across the street from Plant Scherer. I would like to know if this permit is going to cover the pipeline that is next to my property where they pump their wastewater out of the plant into the river, because right now it's lead and I can't even drink my water. I have to go, and that's my question. You know, what's going to be done? Is this permit covering that or not? Because I'm opposed to any kind of renewal on the permit that they have had.
Thank you, Pam. If anyone else would like to make a comment, please raise your hand. If you are calling in from a phone and would like to raise your hand, you can select *9. Otherwise, at the bottom of your screen, there will be a bar that says participants. You should be able to select your name and click raise your hand. If you're struggling to do that, you can also just let me know that you would like me to unmute you in the chat, and I can do it that way. Cindy Griffin, I'm going to unmute your line.
Yes, I would like to say that as far as the opposal to this permit, most people are opposed to this permit because the permits in the past that y'all have given them have not, obviously, if there's with the groundwater contamination that's in this area, the permits that were given before didn't work. And that's one reason why we are so opposed to this, is because them draining this stuff and containing this stuff over here is in the aquifer and it's in Berry Creek and where else ever whatever other fallout areas they have, and has caused groundwater contamination. And I think that this does not need to continue. And if you allow them to dump more, it's going to probably be even worse. Thank you.
Sorry, I was muted. Andrea Goolsby, I'm going to unmute your line.
Andrea Goolsby again. I would like to bring to everyone's attention that at the beginning, when they were explaining some of the changes that had been made to the permit, there were several metals, arsenic, selenium, copper, zinc, nickel, that present their high levels of concern. And so they wanted to increase monitoring for that. So I pray that EPD really takes into consideration, you've already got chemicals with the toxins at high levels of concern that we're talking about giving them permission to put into our water sources. You know, if EPD doesn't look out for the people, then who is? Who is for us? Who is going to help us? Thank you.
Thank you. Doug, apologize if I mispronounced your last name. Doug Eder, I'm going to unmute your line.
Thank you, Audra. This is Doug Otter of Milledgeville, Georgia. I'm a native of Macon, and I grew up on the Ocmulgee River. Spent a lot of time there, and I'm familiar with the site. I would like to remind everyone that we all live downwind and downstream. So the poisons that are coming out of the plant Scherer, which is the nation's largest coal-fired power plant, one of the largest in the world, affect not only the people of Juliet, who are suffering intensively, but everyone who lives within hundreds of miles suffer from the atmospheric and the hydrologic offshoot of this operation. Back in the late 70s, when the plant was proposed, it was done so to benefit people in other areas. So the investors came from Florida and Dalton and around the state. And the people of Juliet, you would have thought they would have seen better economic return on the costs that have come to them over the last 45 years. But as it turns out, except for one movie and the hard work of the people who live there, Georgia Power's largely neglected this area, and they have not reinvested their very intensive profits in this area. So when EPD releases justification, and when you hear Georgia Power try to shift the argument away from the environment and towards the economy, I would encourage the EPD board to think very strongly that the economy here in this part of Monroe County has been neglected for the benefit of the shareholders and for the benefit of people in other parts of the Southeast, people like Jacksonville and Florida, who have essentially exported their pollution to Monroe County and held victim the people of Central Georgia at enormous expense, as we heard from the sacrifices that these fine people are suffering. It's time for EPD under this particular permit to strengthen, not weaken, the resolve of protection of the environment of Middle Georgia. I would like to have EPD just go ahead and say, look, this is an environmental sacrifice zone, and we sacrifice the people here. That's why they're filling in the wells. That's why they're buying the property. But it doesn't need to go any further, especially for a power plant that's going to shut down anytime now. They're going to close up the fourth burner in the next few years because coal is no longer profitable. It's coming all the way from Wyoming, for goodness sake. And there are cheaper and cleaner alternatives, and there should be more reinvestment here. And the way to achieve that is to ask the shareholders of Georgia Power to take some ownership for what they have done. They have profiteered for 40 years, and the profits of their decisions are in those coal ash ponds. And what they are proposing to do now is the same thing they did here in Baldwin County, which is just release it to the environment and put it out into the lake, put it out into the river and let somebody downstream or downwind deal with it. And the fine people of Georgia deserve a little bit better with that. And I strongly encourage the board to deny this variance and ask Georgia Power to do the right thing for once and go ahead and take ownership and pay back to the people of Monroe County what they took from them all those years ago. Thank you very much, Audra, for your fine monitoring of this hearing.
Thank you. If anyone else would like to make a comment, please raise your hand now. Give it just one more minute, but it doesn't look like we have any raised hands currently. Cindy Griffin, I'm going to unmute your line.
I would just like to make the comment that since we know that they are dumping the stuff that is in coal ash and the oils and the greases and the other stuff that they use and stuff, and they're dumping into water, I feel like there should be a way for them to help as far as making sure that the people that are in this community are protected. As far as testing, maybe they could have the EPD come out and test people's wells to make sure that this stuff is not getting in here, or if it increases or if it lowers, or exactly what's going on, because I feel like that some of this information might be a little bit useful for the EPD in the future when you're trying to make these decisions for other ash ponds and other places. If you can know exactly what happens when they increase releasing all this stuff. Thank you.
Thank you. Pam Wolf, I'm going to unmute your line.
Hi, my name is Pam Wolf. I'm a Monroe County resident as well as the founder of the Juliet Road neighborhood news page. I'd just like to voice that I've only been in Monroe County approximately 10 years. For the last 5 of them, I've been, dealing with my well being contaminated. I'm very thankful that we're getting some water lines put in, but we have got to express to the EPD how important it is for Georgia Power to have to answer to what they've done to us and what they've done to this community. And I would strongly like to recommend that they look heavily into this. There has been extensive water testing done already. It's already been determined that the water contamination of all of these heavy toxins are in our water coming from the very places they're wanting to dump water and not close these ponds properly. That's really all I have to say. I just pray with all my might that they can come to their senses and not issue any permits allowing anything other than complete cleanup of the situation and not allow any more toxins to be dumped into our water aquifers or our surrounding, water bodies. Thank you.
Thank you, Pam. If anyone else would like to make a comment for the record, please raise your hand. All right, I want to do one last call. Okay, Jenny Bruner, I'm going to unmute your line.
Yes, ma'am, it's Jenny Bruner again. I don't know if it's possible or not, if EPD can go out and test water on some of these waterways behind some of these folks' houses, borders these here creeks and stuff, and check beforehand what's in these creeks and do some one-on-one talking with those families that have been affected by several different things. Yes, Georgia Power has been good to the community, and I think they do try to do good, but I think that they should, I think EPD should get out and do some visiting and do some one-on-one talking and investigations of themselves. Again, I'm very much opposed of this permit being allowed for Georgia Power for the waterways. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Bruner. If anyone else would like to make a comment during this hearing for the record, please raise your hand. I'll ask one last time. If anyone would like to make a comment for the record, please raise your hand. If you're struggling with the raise your hand option, please let me know via the chat feature. And if you're calling in on the phone, please press *9 to raise your hand. All right, Audra, it doesn't look like anyone else has their hand raised to make a comment this evening.
Okay, thank you, Whitney. Any written comments on the draft permit must be submitted to EPD by the close of business, October 23rd, 2020. The email address for submitting written comments is epdcomments@dnr.ga.gov. Again, the email address for submitting written comments is epdcomments@dnr.ga.gov. Comments received at tonight's hearing, as well as those submitted in writing, will be addressed by EPD once a final determination has been made for the permit. Any in attendance who would like a copy of the draft permit and fact sheet may email myself or go online and use the GEOS public inquiry portal and search for submittal ID number 301997. Again, submittal ID number is 301997. My contact information is on the next slide, as well as Ms. Fenwick's. As the hearing officer, I declare the public hearing closed. Thank you for participating in this evening's public participation process and hearing.